Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison LaGrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa, from elections to climate change, to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison LaGrange, coming to you live from Johannesburg, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Israel strikes ports and energy infrastructure in Houthi-controlled parts of Yemen and threatens more attacks after the Iran-backed group attacked Israeli military targets in Tel Aviv. In his annual year-end news conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow's forces are closer to achieving their primary goals on the battlefield in Ukraine. A French court finds all 51 defendants guilty, including Dominique Pellico, the ex-husband of the victim Giselle Pellico, in a landmark drugging and rape case that left the world horrified. Pakistan says US sanctions imposed on its state-owned and private companies over its long-range ballistic missile program are biased and have dangerous implications for regional stability. And Myanmar junta reveals plans to hold an election early next year amid an escalating civil war, including potentially inviting foreign poll observers. We begin with the latest from Libya, the North African country which has been in a political deadlock for 3 years now. Delegations from rival Libyan administrations resumed talks in Morocco with an aim to end the deadlock and prevent the country from sliding back into chaos. During the talks in Bouznika, near the Moroccan capital of Rabat, Morocco's foreign minister has urged both sides to work together and to prepare for credible elections in Libya. Chaos in Libya began after an armed revolt backed by NATO toppled and killed longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, ending his 4-decade rule. The armed rebel groups then held elections for an interim General National Congress, or the GNC, which formed a transitional government. But the true power still rested with the local armed groups. Over the next year, these armed groups forced the Congress to bow to their demands. Members from rebel groups sought to extend the Congress's 18-month term and delay elections. In 2014, the Congress then rejected the results of an election to a new parliament called the House of Representatives. It then set up a government backed by armed groups, and the newly elected parliament, or the House of Representatives, moved from Tripoli to the east. Now, this set up Libya's eastern administration in Benghazi. It is headed by Khalifa Haftar, a former general who united several armed factions as the Libyan National Army. Now, in 2015, the warring parliamentary bodies signed the Libyan Political Agreement and set up a new transition under a government of national accord. Now, according to this agreement, the House of Representatives was confirmed as Libya's parliament, but also gave members of the Congress a new role as an advisory chamber that was called the High State Council. In 2016, as the House of Representatives took office in Tripoli, it rejected the new government, deepening the East-West divide. For the next 2 years, armed groups in the West battled for Tripoli, while also battling Islamist militant groups across the country. In 2019, Haftar relaunched an offensive, having captured Libya's Oil Crescent region. He drove his LNA through the southern Libya, bringing the remaining oil fields under his control. Today, he controls over 90% of oil fields in Libya. His assault was backed by the UAE, Egypt, and Russia. The Western Libyan armed groups came together to support the Tripoli government with help from Turkey. In 2020, after Turkey openly sent troops to Tripoli, Haftar's offensive collapsed and his forces pulled back to the east. Now, in 2021, both sides accepted a new government of national unity and presidency council that would oversee elections in December. But the elections fell apart last minute as the House of Representatives in the east and the High State Council in the west failed to agree on a new constitution or rules for the vote. Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibah, who currently heads the Tripoli-based Western administration, refused to step down after the 2021 elections collapsed. In response, Haftar's Eastern administration appointed a rival prime minister. Repeated efforts to end the impasse and to bring stability back to Libya have failed. Morocco has been backing the Libyan dialogue and says the solution should come from the Libyans themselves. Now, as the fight for power between the two sides unfolded over the years, the people of Libya continue to live in fear amid a rapidly deteriorating situation. From catastrophic floods in some regions last year to dire economic state, will the two warring sides end Libya's state of paralysis for its people? Will Libya be ready for credible elections? And for more on this, we are being joined live by Professor William Gumede, who is the founder of Democracy WF and an international affairs analyst. Thank you for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I'm very happy to be with you.
Now, Professor, what role does Morocco's historical and political relationship with Libya play in its ability to mediate between the rivaling administrations?
The first one is just, Morocco was very key in negotiating the 2015 deal that's put together, the initial unity government that is now under question. So that's first. Secondly, Morocco also supported, the groups that opposed Muammar Gaddafi, the former leader of Libya. So in that context, in the last couple of years, Morocco has been, has risen actually as a political player on the continent because its economy has become very stable. The country has become very politically very stable in a region where we've seen a lot of, in North Africa, a lot of government collapse, and the rest of Africa, a lot of government collapse. And maybe the last one would be the collapse of Syria, and which has also changed the ball game, changed the politics of the Middle East and North Africa. And Morocco now appears to be a very, very stable country.
Right, and Professor, what are the key obstacles that are facing Libya in it preventing it from achieving the credible elections that Morocco is advocating for, and how might these be addressed during the mediation process?
I mean, the first thing is, unfortunately, they've been this crisis has been running since 2021, and all of the different interest groups, the situation actually caters for them. So they've all become happy with the situation. They've got benefits in the current instability and chaos. Secondly, there's a lot of outside groups with interests in Libya's crisis. So their interest is to continue the Libyan crisis, to exert their power. And then there is the differences between the groups itself. For example, the Tobruk government, the House of Representatives, they say they will only support, for example, a unified government. And then you've got a group under Mohammed Takala, who reject, for example, any election laws that will come from the House of Representatives. And then, the two other ones in terms of The one big issue is that the part that the Khalifa Haftar group, and that's the House of Representatives, they only want to be part of any negotiation if it's a collective effort. And I think that is what Morocco now will have to help them navigate, because you must remember that the UN so far has struggled to put a deal together, and the AU has been spectacularly absent in leading a mediation process.
And Professor, how could Morocco's mediation efforts affect regional stability in North Africa? And what kind of support does it need from the international community to ensure a successful resolution?
I mean, the Libyan crisis doesn't only have implications in the region, but it's also internationally. For example, I mean, the rise of fundamentalist Islamist groups because of the chaos and lack of security in Libya itself, and the great migrations and the countries surrounding Libya have all been destabilized because Libya has been destabilized. Europe has been destabilized because of the rise of the migrations. And of course, the people of Libya itself, I mean, are suffering from hunger, lack of stability, lack of security. So it is absolutely critical stability, not only of the region, but also of the Middle East itself, and also of Europe. And this crisis in Libya actually started in a way to some extent by the West, because Western countries try to force a regime change in Libya, and this has been a result. The chaos that we see now has been a result of that initial attempt, external Western attempt to try to have to get about a regime change in Libya. Now the West must come to the party to support stability, but support stability that are organized by locals, supported by African countries and the African Union.
Yeah. Professor, thank you very much for joining us on the show and for your valued insights and analysis on all of the latest coming out of Libya and Morocco.
Thank you.
Shifting our focus now to Liberia in West Africa, where the parliament was set on fire amid anti-government protests and political tensions. A major fire broke out at Liberia's Capitol building in the capital of Monrovia. This was the second time in a week that Liberia's parliament caught fire, and came on the second day of the anti-government protests. Videos show flames engulfing the building, with thick black smoke rising high into the sky. The flames destroyed the entire joint chambers of the legislature. However, no one was in the building at the time, and firefighters quickly rushed to the scene to contain the spread. Authorities say that the cause of the fire is not yet known. But the blaze comes at a time of political turmoil and protests in Liberia. The protest began with outrage over the ouster of the parliament speaker, Konati Kofa, who is a member of Liberia's opposition party and has been accused of corruption by the government. Lawmakers launched a bid in October to remove Kofa, accusing him of corrupt practices. The House of Representatives has been facing a power struggle since then. The Supreme Court ruling has failed to solve the internal dispute. After months of tensions, protests began in the capital on Tuesday against the move to remove Liberia's parliament speaker. The demonstrators are also calling for the president, Joseph Boakai, to step down. On Tuesday, police arrested dozens of protesters and used tear gas to disperse the crowds. However, it is not yet clear if there is any connection between the parliament fires and the political situation in Liberia. But the police have taken at least 4 people questioning. Now, these people include the Parliament Speaker Konati Kofa and the prominent figure in the House of Representatives, Frank Foko. The representative had allegedly uploaded a video on Facebook recently in which he had threatened to burn the chambers. Now, neither he nor the Parliament Speaker, Khalifa, have responded publicly to the accusations. Meanwhile, President Joseph Boakai has expressed disappointment over the incident and has ordered the security agencies to investigate. The government has also offered a $5,000 reward for more information about the fire. Amid the growing tensions, Liberia's parliament is witnessing a deadlock. Liberia's law provides that the speaker can be removed by a 2/3 majority of the House. But without the necessary support for that, the proceedings have stalled, and the government has also not been able to pass the annual budget. And staying on in the West African region, the junta-led Mali has joined its neighbors Burkina Faso and Niger in ramping up efforts to shed the remnants of its colonial past and to restore the country's rich history and cultural identity. Its latest target? Streets that bear the name of the former colonizer, France. Mali has already shut its doors for Western troops and has moved on to forge closer ties with Russia. So, does this latest move mark the end of West's foothold in West Africa? Our next report gets you the details.
Anti-colonial sentiment in West Africa is taking a new shape. After shedding their ties with former colonial powers, especially France, some of these nations have been looking to restore their culture and honor their rich history, dumping their colonial past. Their latest action, renaming streets that carry former colonial powers' names or identities. Mali is the latest nation to do so. The West African country, which has been ruled by a military junta since 2020, has chosen to get rid of the French colonial names its streets and squares carry, especially in the capital city of Bamako. A decree from the junta chief, Colonel Assimi Goïta, stated that streets bearing the names of members of France's colonial administration have been rebaptized in the capital city. This came after Mali's Council of Ministers had reportedly mandated to rename squares, streets and public buildings in Bamako earlier in December as part of Mali's post-independence efforts to decolonize public spaces and reshape historical narratives. Reports suggest that nearly 25 names across boulevards, streets, squares and public establishments have been replaced. An avenue in the capital city that bore the French name of regional bloc ECOWAS has also been changed to a new strategic confederation that Mali has formed with its neighbors Burkina Faso and Niger, called the Alliance of Sahel States. Now, Mali had gained independence from France in 1960. Post-independence, the country maintained good diplomatic ties with its former colonial power, which aided it in fighting jihadist insurgents in the region. But ever since the military junta took over after a double coup in 2020 and 2021, it has turned its back on France and Western allies due to mistrust. The junta has instead turned closer to Russia, which is providing it with military support in return for raw materials for industrial production amid the ongoing conflict with Ukraine. But interestingly, Mali is not alone in shutting its doors to France. Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad and Senegal have also rejected France and forced Paris to pull out its military from their territory. Burkina Faso and Niger, which are being ruled by junta as well, have also ramped up their efforts to shed remnants of colonialism in their countries. They have also renamed several streets, boulevards and historical monuments that carried French administration or colonial names. In October this year, Niger's military leaders renamed an avenue that bore the name of former French President Charles de Gaulle in the capital city of Niamey to honor the legacy of Nigerian politician Jibo Bakari, who had played a key role in the West African country's struggle for independence. So, with Africa's junta trio denouncing their former colonial power and its allies, is it the end of the West's chapter in West Africa?
And for our last story, let's turn our focus to Uganda. The East African country is witnessing a mysterious outbreak, which has left hundreds of people shaking like they are dancing. The disease is called dinga dinga. It is causing people's bodies to tremble uncontrollably. Authorities, doctors, and residents are searching for answers as the unexplained disease continues to spread. Our last report gets you more details on Uganda's mysterious dancing disease outbreak.
Authorities in Uganda are troubled by a new health concern. A new disease is on the spread in the East African country, which is making people uncontrollably shake like they are dancing. The mysterious disease is locally called dinga dinga, which also translates to shaking like one's dancing. The outbreak has been confirmed in the Bundibugyo district of Uganda's western region that borders the Democratic Republic of Congo. The disease was first reported a few months ago, and so far it has infected around 300 people, mostly women and children. Authorities say the outbreak has not spread to other districts and it has not caused any deaths or serious concerns. Those who have been the victims of the virus have felt weakness, fever, chills, severe exhaustion, and also felt paralyzed. But the most peculiar of all symptoms is the uncontrollable trembling, which has made people incapacitated and made basic activities like walking or sitting nearly impossible. The strange phenomena has left residents and doctors searching for answers, but the reason why people are bizarrely shaking remains unexplained. Health experts are conducting investigations to identify the cause. So far, they are treating the disease with antibiotics, and most patients have recovered within a week. However, health officials have raised concerns that locals are resorting to traditional herbal medicines to ease symptoms. But doctors warn these remedies lack scientific evidence. To help fight the unexplained outbreak, Russia has also come to Uganda's aid. Russia's human welfare watchdog has said it is in touch with Ugandan health authorities over the disease. While the new dancing disease has baffled countries across the world, it is not the first time a dancing mania has come into light. There are many accounts of dancing plagues and mass hysteria in history, most particularly in Europe from 14th to 15th century, when in some bizarre events, people unexplainably danced spontaneously for several days, even to their death. The most documented event is the dancing plague of the year 1518, when residents of the city of Strasbourg, now in France, were struck by a sudden and seemingly uncontrollable urge to dance. As per reports, it claimed the lives of around 400 people, and the causes behind this plague still remain unknown. So while Uganda's outbreak is reminiscent of Europe's dancing plague, the continent of Africa is also not new to mystery diseases. The outbreak comes into light just at a time when neighboring DR Congo has clarified that a mysterious flu-like disease that has killed more than 143 people is in fact a case of severe malaria. The disease was being referred to as disease X for week. Not to forget, these diseases are surfacing when African nations are also fighting the Mpox virus. So be it malaria, Mpox or mysterious dancing virus, the year is wrapping up for Africa with a slew of public health concerns.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Gurshin Gal.